and welcome to this episode of Trader Talk TV. I'm Lindsay Rowntree, and I am delighted to be joined by Travis O'Neill, who is VP of Product at GumGum. Welcome, Travis.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Great to have you here, all the way from the US as well. Thank you for traveling in. We're going to talk about mindset graph, and in particular, kind of an update. We did a Trader Talk with Pete Wallace last year, so he looked at that. If you haven't watched it, go back and watch it. It's definitely worth a watch. And you're going to talk about the update on that, and kind of what's happened in the prevailing year.
Yes.
But before that, though, you are a GumGum lifer. Talk to us a little bit about your role at GumGum and more about GumGum itself.
Yeah. So yes, I'm coming up on 14 years at GumGum.
Wow.
I've been in a number of different roles in that time. I formerly ran operations, and then I moved into a product about 6 years ago, and I've run product since then. GumGum is an ad exchange. We work primarily as an SSP with most of our partners. We've had a real long-term focus on contextual technology. It's still a bedrock and foundation to what we're doing today. But we also have this really key attention infrastructure, and then what's becoming our new mindset infrastructure that really powers everything that we do on our platform. We do rich media, high-impact display units, as well as now CTV as well, both standard CTV and high-impact CTV formats too.
This is very exciting. It sounds like the mindset graph hopefully helps bring it all together into one. I can't wait to dig into it and for you to unpack it for us. So get drawing. What
All right, sounds good. All right, I'm going to do a little doodle here at the bottom.
Yeah.
So last year, Pete made this really great mindset graph picture where we were linking contextual segments together with attention here. And it was a wonderful graphic that I'm not going to expand on. You should just go back and watch the video.
Very good callback.
Yes. What's great about everything that we developed in the past is it really allowed us to understand a moment in time really, really well. The contextual understanding allowed us to understand the sentiment that was happening, as well as just all the context. And we would look at, using computer vision, we do look at the imagery, as well as in video, we could process video on a frame-by-frame basis and really understand the sentiment and the emotion inside all of those moments. So we understood that moment extremely well. And now I'm going to push my limits here a little bit. We're going to try to do some real art.
Oh, my God.
Okay. So there's a very famous painting that exists that looks something like this.
Can you tell what it is yet?
And there's this very slight smile. This is supposed to be the Mona Lisa.
That's
Go with
beautiful.
it.
That's
beautiful.
beautiful.
You know, we'll add a little bit of decorative, so you know it's high art on the frame. So the Mona Lisa is in a room. It's always in the same room.
Yes.
We can understand the Mona Lisa from this angle, from your angle, from far away, from really close. We know all about that painting. We know all about that room.
Yeah.
And importantly, with first-party and third-party data, we know a lot about the people who show up to that room.
Very
But
true.
we don't know why that person showed up today, why that person showed up in the moment. Bob and Monica might walk into that room at the same time to see the same painting and stand right next to each other. But the experience Monica has looking at that painting and the experience Bob has looking at that painting, vastly different experiences. And then even Bob, he might walk in that room, and then in an alternate universe walk into that room, completely different mindsets, completely different experiences. The point that we have here is that we bring something unique to every moment that we have, whether that's an experience to see an ad or an experience to see beautiful, fine art. And those are really impactful and distinct, and we need to be able to make sure that we are serving ads that will be receptive and relevant to the experience that that individual has at that moment.
Yeah.
And so it's important to understand all of these moment signals, the contextual stuff, the attention stuff, all of that's really important and helpful to that. What we've started doing now is really trying to understand, can we look at this, but can we see what you were doing a minute ago, and 5 minutes ago, and an hour ago? Not long-term stuff. We don't want to rebuild first-party and third-party data. That's not what we're interested in. We want to know what you're bringing into the moment that you show up right now. And so what we're building now is this big universe of all of these little moment snapshots that we see. And this is a combination of everything that we can see about an experience someone would have. It's the individual contextual information.
Yeah.
It's the device that they show up on. It's the weather of that day. It's the stuff that they bring into that moment. It's everything that we can see from our tech and the stuff that we can see in the bid stream. And so our process today now is we'll take an RFP. My writing is about as good as my art. And we will send it into here to find out what is relevant in these moments.
Yes.
In these moments in time. And so here's me at 5 in the morning, here's me at 7 at night. I might be part of this audience then, but not here. So we'll draw a bunch of these different circles. Some will be bigger than others. Some of them might even overlap with other ones based on the stuff that we see inside of it. And then, because ultimately at the end of the day, people care about the outcomes for their campaign, we'll take that same methodology and we'll point it at the outcome that they care about. brand lift, conversions, CTR, reach, whatever, and start finding these little segments inside of here that are actually performing really well. So we work inside of these relevancy spaces, but then there's individual spaces inside of those that we see that are really doing well for whatever performance metric that our clients care about.
That's interesting. So if I am an advertiser and how do I even get started understanding kind of, because the argument could be that, a couple of years ago, we might have said it doesn't matter who these people are. Does it still not matter who they are? Or does it matter more now who they are? It matters more what they're doing.
This is a convergence. It's a convergence of all this stuff. It's really trying to take all of this real-time information that we have, all of these contextual signals we have, and bridge it with who that someone is, but more importantly, who that someone is right now.
Yeah.
Because if this is me at 5 in the morning and this is me at 5 at night, I am not receptive to this ad at that time for whatever reason it might be. It might just be because I'm waking up. It might be the content that I'm reading. It might be the device that I'm on. It might be the weather. If it's freezing right now, I'm not going to want an ice cream cone, but when it's hot, I would love an ice cream cone.
Yeah.
All of those individual things matter, and importantly, they all matter at different times.
Yeah.
When we run this and look at performance, what we end up seeing at the end is we see charts that kind of look like this, where things will kind of become more important and less important over the course of a campaign. And so what traditionally happens is when we're running campaigns and we include and exclude things, we have all these binary relationships, you might start optimizing a campaign and you might see this thing as, oh, this one's not doing that well. You might just cut this whole part of that story off, that whole signal off and not target it. And you'll miss this spike in performance. And it changes day by day, week by week. Some things hold importance over time. There are some signals that have stronger relevancy and importance to the receptivity of an ad.
Yeah.
But there are certain things that also just spike given a whole sort of different conditions that we might see over the time. We were looking at one recently. I can't even remember what the campaign was for. It was for, I don't remember. But it hit for holidays. So in the US, we had a spike on Thanksgiving, and we had a spike on Christmas. This very particular contextual segment popped twice there. But on the other days, it didn't really have any real effect. It was a Q3 campaign that ran all of October, November, December. And it was kind of like down here in terms of importance, and then big spike. Family get-togethers or something, I'm not really sure what it was, but one of those elements really popped then.
It's so interesting because obviously you mentioned outcomes, and outcomes are extremely important, and this plays into that really, really well because you've got the granularity of these relevancy spaces. And, there's an argument to say that, in advertising it's challenging because if things don't work immediately, we switch them off.
Right.
So how do you help encourage and consult with your clients to kind of get them to understand the importance of giving things a bit of time and seeing if something might come further down the line so they're not missing out on these opportunities?
The nice part is because we've baked this whole space, and what we'll see these kind of circles inside move. So it's constantly adjusting to it. So we never, the overall performance of a campaign will look a little bit flatter or ideally even go up a little bit over time, but you won't see all these individual waves until you kind of want to break into it at the end. And we can say, listen, this is the stuff that really mattered. And then importantly, let's take that information back to the start when we run the next campaign with you, whether it's the same thing that you're going to run against or you have a different kind of tactic overall.
Right. And how does this play out from an omnichannel perspective? And from, obviously you mentioned, we talked about attention, CTV.
Yes.
So how am I going to be planning planning my campaign when I want to make sure that all channels are talking to each other? I'm understanding kind of the context of, obviously the Mona Lisa example was a great one because all these different people are bringing a different identity to this one space in this one moment in time. You could argue the same thing of anybody watching TV or whatever else. So how does that play together?
Yes, it's a great question. So one of the things that's really helpful about this is that in CTV, we have some great signals, but we have a lack of other signals.
Exactly.
There's a lot more richness to the signal that we can cover inside of the open web. So things like scroll rate, how attentive they are to individual places in that page that they're viewing, as well as switching devices, how they travel, all these other things that we can kind of see don't exist in CTV.
Yeah.
And even contextual is a lot harder in CTV. We are able to scan on a frame-by-frame basis for some inventory on CTV, but not all inventory on CTV, at least not yet. And so by being able to bring all of this understanding and apply it to an ID, we can bring that understanding to CTV so we know what they were doing, or we know what they're doing concurrently to watching TV. So if Bluey's on TV for my kids and I'm doing something on my phone, we can reasonably infer that, okay, maybe his attention is slightly fragmented, but he's mostly in on probably what he's doing on his phone. I do love Bluey, but not all the way. Bluey is great, but not all the way clued in all the time. Whereas if I'm watching a basketball game or something that I will be more drawn into and I'm more passive on my phone, that might not be the right time to serve me an ad, because my attention is really fragmented here. I'm not going to be paying attention my attention's on the screen.
Yeah.
And so all these things end up working together where we have this rich signal environment from the open web, and we can bring that understanding to that TV buy.
The signals, the identity you talked about, it feels like it could be really powerful from a commerce perspective. How does that play into this? Because, you know, the example you gave of me on my phone watching a basketball game or watching Bluey or not watching Bluey, like this could be really powerful for commerce advertisers.
We think it can be powerful for every advertiser. Yeah. Commerce in particular makes a lot of sense too, especially considering how often we go to our phones to make decisions about what we want to do.
Yeah.
There's a huge element of, I'm here to make a decision. There is some social media browsing and stuff, of course, that happens when you're in more of that laid-back branding experience. But a lot of the times when we're engaging with our phone, we're engaging with problem solving.
Yeah.
And so giving them an ad for something that allows them to complete their problem by buying a Tide stick to clean their shirt or whatever that might be is a really powerful thing to be able to serve in that moment.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I want to understand as well, you know, from an advertiser perspective, if I'm coming into this, like, how do I start? So you said, you know, we get an RFP, we put the RFP into the mindset graph. Like, what should I be giving you to make sure that actually that you're getting the most out of this and you're able to kind of take the most of my information to really kind of make this sing?
We have two kind of entry points.
Right.
We have just our normal managed service where you just send us the RFP.
Yeah.
And then what you traditionally would get back is you'd get a presentation from us that's all beautiful, and then a media grid that lays out some of the contextual strategies. And the way that used to be written was, here's like the contextual strategy, and it'd be all focused on keywords and IAB segments and these kind of things. And then we might throw in here's some third-party data we're going to do, here's something else we might do, whatever the different tactics that we might use.
Yeah.
All of this gets kind of bundled up
into
one thing that's more comprehensive and speaks a little bit more concretely to the RFP. And what we've seen is, especially compared to like traditional vertical targeting that we have, this is multitudes of higher relevance than a traditional like vertical targeted RFP.
Yeah.
So it's bringing that relevance to the experience in a way that wasn't possible before. And then so we'll return something back to you that speaks in more natural language about the kind of experiences we will be targeting, trigger events, and some of the contextual information that you'd expect to see.
Yeah.
But it's going to be more natural language in scope. The other way you can get access to this, we also have this portal. It's called our Mindset Graph portal. People can log in, they can start building their own thoughts and plans on there, and it can be an iterative process. So they can put some prompt in, they can put an RFP in, and get some information back on that. And then if they don't like what they see, and they say, oh, actually, I really think this isn't who I'm looking for, it's more something like this, you can kind of iterate on that, and it's not just this one-shot experience, it's a multiple shot to really craft what you want and really define those relevancy spaces in a way that's most meaningful for you or the brand.
That's very cool. So actually help them make the most out of the relevancy spaces. That's a really good idea. And so what are you seeing so far in terms of results? Like, how are advertisers using it effectively? Yeah,
so a big part of this point is we are seeing an increase in relevancy. Like I mentioned, we're also starting to see increases in the outcomes that we track and are looking at. We're still working on some of the outcomes that matter. Some of the more brand lift ones are a little bit harder to crack. There's less data for us to look at.
Of course.
But things like CTR viewability, attention for us, we're seeing VCR. We're seeing really large lifts from what we were doing even last year using our old mindset graph, original mindset graph.
The OG.
Yes, the OG experience. Yes, exactly.
That's great. And so, from what are you expecting how are you expecting this to develop and evolve? Like, in a year's time, if you're back again, what do you think is going to happen? Because obviously you've mentioned that AI is involved in this. AI is moving at a very, very fast rate. So it's expected this would be very iterative over the course of the next 12 months.
There's kind of two primary areas of development that we want to consider for this. One is the signal richness and the signal quality matters a ton to this.
Yeah.
So a big part of the backbone, like I mentioned, is contextual here. And so the signal quality we have contextual we feel is really solid and a great foundation for it. We want to find other signals of high quality to add into this.
Yeah.
One of the things that we're really interested in is we have a subsidiary called Relevancy. It's a sports measurement arm of our business.
Nice.
We want to get sports data in here. I know that my moods shift rapidly if my team wins or loses. I'm assuming most people feel the same way. We know that's going to have an impact on the mindset here. We haven't really seen that yet because we haven't put that data inside of this yet.
Yeah.
But we want to start putting other sources of data into here to see if that is meaningfully changing the makeup of these individual moment snapshots. So continuing to enrich this experience and finding things that will drive, again, either greater relevancy or greater outcomes is the first thing. The second thing is just distribution. This works on our platform right now. If you want to run this, you have to run on GumGum's SSP. It's the only place that it works. We are interested in figuring out different ways of making this data more accessible for other SSPs. If an advertiser wants to run across different formats or different experiences, we're open to trying to figure out different ways of bringing at least some form of this into those experiences as well. So I would imagine that our roadmap for next year, or the presentation for next year, would maybe talk a little bit more about what constitutes these individual snapshots, as well as where we can distribute it out to other places for activation.
That's really exciting. And one thing I wanted to ask you as well was like how this plays into then the creative aspect of it, because obviously, rich media is a huge part of GumGum's story. Kind of how does this play out in terms of what an advertiser then does to get the message across to these different spaces?
So in our RFP ingestion process, we also make creative recommendations.
Nice.
Actually, one of the hot off the presses brand new things is you can actually upload a creative to that you've already built and get recommendations based on a creative that already exists.
That's very cool.
That's like a week old. We just rolled that out in beta just a week ago. So very exciting. Yeah, that creative is obviously so important to all of the effectiveness of this as well. The targeting is one component of it, but the creative messaging has to land in order for it to be really meaningful and impactful.
Brilliant. I mean, that's been really great, Travis. Thank you so much. I'm fascinated by this and can't wait to kind of see how it evolves. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. This is great.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.